All right, good evening, everyone. Looks like we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. Currently, Mr. Baber has not joined us yet, and hopefully he will be here. I haven't received a message yet, so we're going to go ahead and move forward with 8 members present, and we'll call the meeting to order, and it looks like we're going to have some public speakers. So we'll go ahead and start with public comments. Based on this list, I know most of you know this. What I would say is, when you step up, name and address for the public record. You get 3 minutes to speak on what it is you'd like to talk about. Gatewood Campbell, we'll start with you.
My name is Gatewood Campbell, and I live at 104 Interlaken Place here in Huntersville. Planning Board, I'm here today to encourage you to vote yes to the final draft of the Downtown Master Plan. I was one of the 15 voting members on the Downtown Plan Steering Committee, and although we started out light years away from each other, we came together and voted unanimously to approve this plan and send it to you and eventually to the board. This process was not an easy one, but the voting members and ex officios were deeply committed to coming up with a solid plan to add new life and excitement to our downtown. Over the course of 13 months, we met 15 times. That's 30 hours of meetings and discussions, and that doesn't include the research and homework done to prepare for the meetings. Additionally, we had 3 public forums throughout the process for a total of 18 meetings. As you review the plans, please take into full consideration the details done ahead of your job tonight. I assure you we did our due diligence on this project, and we are proud of the final product. I encourage you to trust the process and approve the plan as presented tonight. I want to thank Chairperson Sarah McCauley and Vice Chair Lee Hallman for their leadership and guidance. I also want to acknowledge and thank planning staff, and in particular Dave Hill and Jack Semino. We may have unintentionally caused Dave to retire. At one point, the committee was at such a standstill, Dave joked if we could pass a plan with unanimous approval, he would host us all for cocktails at his new beach home. I'm proud to say we did the unimaginable. Thank you to each of you for your commitment to the town of Huntersville and your dedication to this board. I hope you will vote unanimously to approve this draft of the master plan and send it to the board for final approval. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Up next, Elaine Kearns.
Hi, I'm Elaine Kearns. I'm at 301 Hillcrest Drive in Huntersville. I was also on the Downtown Planning Steering Committee. It was an interesting and great experience. This is a good plan, and we are all excited about it. I think it's important that you understand a little bit about how the process went. I think it's fair to say that when we began, we had a group of folks who wanted low to medium density, another group that wanted medium to high density, but we eventually came together, and I think this is a medium density plan. It's also what the public wants. When we did the public forums, if you look in all the information online, the majority of the public wants medium density. They didn't want 5 to 6 story buildings. They wanted more like 3 to 4, something to fit more in a village concept with more density in the immediate downtown area and then spreading out. We all knew that we would need big change. We all wanted change, and it's a great plan, and I'm just here to say, please vote for it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Up next, I think this says Doug Williams? No. Yes? Well, that, who lives at 1201 something Drive?
Yeah, I signed up, but that was to sign up to speak?
Yes, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was just a sign up. Could you come?
You're welcome anytime. You don't even have to sign in. Thank you for showing up. And I clearly then got your name wrong, because, oh, okay, there we go. Well, Mr. Williams, thank you. All right. So in which case, Lee, you were saying Amy's going to cede her 3 minutes to you? That's good with me. So Lee, you got 6 minutes?
All right, and I won't use it all. I didn't make a formal speech. I'm just gonna scat some, so I'll use some extra time. But first of all, thank you for having me. My name's Lee Holman. I live at 100 Cambridge Road. I work and play at 119 Gilead. From watching the previous meeting when this was an agenda item, I got the feeling maybe you wanted to hear from some of us, and it'd be helpful, and, you know, we can speak to you, or we could actually have a conversation if you'd like. But just to cover a couple things to do with the downtown master plan. But first, I wanted to jump into the mixed-use storefront text amendment that I don't think you approved yet, but you're considering. And I'm not sure if you know the complete background behind that, but it was all the confusion over the North State project and how that storefront or the commercial non-residential percentage got bargained down from the 50% in our ordinances to 34%. And then from there, it got interpretation-wise, with some crafty interpretation by the developer, I think we wound up somewhere in the 22% or something like that. And that caused a lot of consternation by the board, which several members were concerned. They even expressed the view that they wouldn't have approved the project had they known it was going to go that direction, which caused Jack to draft a text amendment to deal with the definition of non-residential versus commercial. And also, at the same time, the suggestion was made to maybe up the percentage of commercial, because that's what we need most of, in order to give us that buffer, because as you recall, the ordinance said 50%. We wound up with what we thought was going to be 34. So when it comes to conditional zoning, that gives us a little more leeway to work within below the 50%. It could have been 60. So that was some of the reasoning there. The mention was made of letting the market forces dictate the percentage of commercial, which it's not something we want to do, I don't think, for our town's development plans. It's the reason we have community plans, the reason we have a planning staff, the reason we have 2 boards and ordinances and then zoning is to regulate those market forces. So that, I know it was just an offhand comment, but we got to be careful there. And then, you know, ultimately, I guess when we looked into the causes of it and any kind of restitution for it, we went back to when the motion was read, and it was read botched. I don't know if it was intentional or not, where the developer was given a choice of either following the words of the motion that said specifically what could and couldn't be considered non-residential, and what the plan was as submitted, a plan that Jack numerous times with the developer had gone back and forth and redlined and told them they needed to up the percentage of non-residential and not include breezeways and things like that. So that's kind of the background on where that came from and why it's such a volatile issue. So on to the Downtown Steering Committee. So yeah, I think it was a mention of some sides taken, and maybe red side and green sides, but I don't think that's what, you know, Steve really meant when he said that. It was the sides were pretty much laid out when we were chosen. So the board chose members from either the downtown area or adjacent area, or members of the business community. And that's kind of, you know, when you get the group dynamics is you get in a group and you're choosing teams, you know right away there's going to be a competition, right? That's group dynamics. So that's kind of what we were doing. That's where we started from. And that's probably what caused the pause, you know, midway through the process. But it was good. It allowed the group to talk about the issues in full context, the pros and cons of everything, and allowed us to come to the decision we did, which was support this level of the plan, this version of the plan. And so once we understood that process, we understood what Shook Kelly was doing when they laid out the 3 tiers of intensity. We realized that we were all headed to the middle ground anyway. I mean, the low was, there was a mention made of some of the members didn't want to do anything, which is, you know, I don't know anybody on the committee that said it's fine like it is. So we knew that the low was that, to make that point, if you stood by and did nothing, this is all you're going to get. And we knew the high was if you just built it to the sky, this is what you're going to get. So we kind of knew we were going to settle to the middle, And from there, we looked at each of the quadrants, of course, and planned in detail within those zones to try to come up with something that would both benefit the business owners downtown, that would maximize the revenue potential of our downtown area, and give us a place to work, eat, play safely and comfortably. So I think what you're looking at is the best we can do, the best plan over the 13 months that we looked at the stuff. Certain items that were, that were contentious were, of course, the east-west connector. There's the reasoning that was even put on here was before the traffic study, and it was admitted that it wasn't a traffic solution. It was to give us the downtown, the matrix we needed to build it out. So that was kind of one of the points that we were trying to work around or work with, that we were back-ending some street system into a town that had developed, 50, 75 years ago. So the point, and on the east-west connector, no side, if you want to use those terms, wanted it. I mean, Sarah McCauley actually made a motion against it, or a whole speech against it anyway. So we all kind of gathered around the idea that the east-west connector idea, if you look at it, what's the east and what's the west and what's the line of demarcation, that would be the railroad tracks. And if we can't change the railroad track crossings, then there's nothing really we can do to help traffic east to west. So we decided, and I think Jack will show you 4 options we looked at when we looked at what to do about Gilead Road, was to back off and do a regional traffic study. And that way we could.
Sir.
All right.
Yep.
Let me just wrap it up to 2 sentences. Finish that thought, to do a regional traffic study. That way we could address the through traffic that's trying to come through this intersection. And for any other detailed discussions that you'd like to review, I'm here and willing and welcome the conversation. Thank you.
All right, Jacob, I have a question for you. The board, can we call on members if we need for a comment or clarification of something as we discuss this plan? Is it allowable to call on members of the committee that are here that worked on this?
I would say no, you should leave questions for Jack.
Okay.
Thank you. Just during public comments, should be.
All right, thank you, Jack.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So as we get started with our discussion of the downtown master plan, of course, we want to give, as a board, our thanks to the Downtown Steering Committee. That was a ton of time you guys put in. And I know where it started, and it's amazing where you ended up. And I'm glad to see so many people that were a part of that actually acknowledge what they achieved at the end, because I'm sure during certain moments in time it didn't seem like that was going to happen. So thanks to all of you. Staff, you put in a ton of time already. And Dave Hill, if you're watching, I hope you're sitting in a very comfy chair and seeing the fruits of your labor. And to my board and everyone else for being willing to meet off schedule. But I thought it was important that we had one meeting just devoted to this, because of course, last week's meeting, we did have other things on the agenda, and we will come at the end of this month at our next scheduled meeting. Before we wrapped up last week, I asked for kind of your top 3, roughly, topics that each of you had that was most important to you from when you've gone through the plan. And I sort of tallied those up, and then I've put an outline in front of each of you according to kind of the results of that poll, if you will. And the highest vote getter, if you will, was, of course, roads. So we're going to start with that. And I want to address, I did send, of course, an email to all of you earlier today, but then I since had a conversation with staff, and I want to clarify what I had said about roads specifically as it relates to Gilead and the DOT project. Roads are in our purview. What I was driving to was specifically that project per se was not like one of the specific points in the thing. So we can certainly still talk about that, and we will, and we're actually going to start with that. But roads, of course, in general. So I just wanted to clarify in case my email to you earlier today was confusing. But, so the biggest thing on our list was roads. I know that one of the things that we did discuss last week was specifically the potential for a DOT project. But I know we're all pretty passionate about that, so I thought I would start with that. Is there anything additional to what came up last week that you guys would want to talk about related to that project?
Either or just Gilead?
Just to Gilead for right now, to the potential for the DOT widening of all the lanes through the main downtown intersection.
I don't know if it's a question or conversation, but I think if the sentiment is that we want that avoided, we should make sure that whatever our final motion includes specific language that says the town should take whatever action is necessary up to and including taking over control of that road and turning down the money so that it does not happen.
And so, just like we've done in the past, when we make a recommendation to the board, then we sometimes, beyond what would be, I guess, a standard motion, we would throw in, hey, we also feel this way about this additional thing, and just want to let you know. That's what you're getting at, okay.
Ask Stephen, since he was on the committee. I know you had mentioned that the committee didn't really consider it, but on one of the videos, I'm just trying to get clarification, on one of the videos from the meeting, the planner had there were 3 or 4 options for Gilead Road. I don't know if he was meaning that towards the committee or if he was meaning that towards the town. It was something like, option A, do nothing. Option B, accept the plan. Option C, adjust the plan. But in the master plan, currently there's nothing specifically addressed about Gilead Road.
As I understand, that's correct. The 6-lane monstrosity is not a part of the master plan.
In the committee meeting, it was just kind of like its background information, that this information's out on the table, that the NCDOT has a plan.
So the committee in the plan does say to not widen Gilead Road to that 6-lane road, which, by the way, that 6-lane road is not big enough to meet DOT standards, so they'd actually have to relook at it. So that is part of the plan, to not widen in that fashion.
If that's already part of the plan and I was wrong, then maybe we have the option to emphasize specific things just so that it carries that extra weight with the final vote.
Well, I agree with what the committee recommended. That is, don't let it, I just should not be a North Carolina DOT project if they're going to split the town, because it goes down, item 2 here is pedestrian friendly. And if you have a 6-lane Gilead Road, even on that short section, walkability and bike friendly is not going to happen on that 6-lane road.
I would agree with that. Greg, I hate to kind of put you on the spot, but you were bringing up a specific point last week, and you were the only one that made that point. And if nothing else, I just want to give you some more opportunity to present that. If I can summarize and then tell me if I've heard it correctly from you last week, you did have a concern over the DOT funding and potentially losing that. And I think as we look at maybe crafting board emphasis down the road in the next meeting as we pass our recommendation up. I mean, I would love it if we're not squashing your specific idea. So if you if I can just ask a couple questions and maybe to unearth a little bit more where you were coming from. The DOT funding, I think it would be amazing, let me know if you agree, is ideal world if we can redeploy some of that around Huntersville, maybe affect other intersections, traffic solutions, whatever, that ultimately would ease some of the stuff around it, so that way we're utilizing some of the funding. Would that idea work for you and still maintain then the current size of the downtown intersection?
Yeah, so I was going to follow up on that. My thinking, going back to that option A, option B, option C, and I think Jack mentioned that they may have already had some type of communication in this regard. Everything that comes to us has traffic complaints. And it concerns me that we would get rid of something that potentially could alleviate traffic. I'm not in favor of 6-lane highway either. But I would think I would wonder, option C, if we could work with DOT so that we don't lose those funds and see what they may say there's nothing else we can do. But I am concerned with just option A saying, get rid of it and lose the money. I don't know what the answer is to Gilead.
Yeah.
But I'm proposing that, we try to work with DOT to figure out if there's another option, so that we don't lose the money.
Yeah.
And if it's not Gilead, if it's other avenues, then maybe that's the answer. I don't know what the answer is. But I don't want to turn away from them and turn the money away.
Okay. All right. Is that,
Yeah, that was the gist of it.
okay. All right. Any other questions, comments as it relates to DOT and downtown intersection potential? No? Okay. The next thing as it related to roads was the east-west connector. Anybody have any specific comments or questions on that?
That's all right, thank you. I'll just make a comment first. This plan, this proposed plan is a guide. It offers a vision, doesn't offer a concrete solution. None of these plans offer concrete solutions. They just give you some rails to work in, and they change over time. But that said, I don't have a problem with any of those. East-west connector, the board of the committee chose to include that in the plan. I don't have a problem with the way they presented it. And I don't think that I need to question what they did. The only question I would ask outside the purview of this is, does any part of that downtown connector as drawn across private property? That's the biggest, always have concern about that, because it's easy for a city to draw a line on a map and say, we're going to put a road here without considering the landowners in that area. That's beyond the purview of this, but it's a comment I think needs to be made.
Frank, I think it's fair to point out that the east-west connector is not a part of the plan.
Now my viewpoint is that it is part of the plan. It's on there, it's proposed, it's dotted line. Somebody's put a map on the line for a possible road, and once they put that on a possible road, Jack, I bow to you. What our traffic engineer says in the plans, another developer come in, you got a road there. We put it, and if we put that road in our plan, dotted or not, it's there.
Yes, so the east-west road is in the plan. There are contingencies to that plan. And so there's 3 different sections, and so the contingencies are there, but it is part of the plan.
All right, thank you very much, Jack.
This was another one of my bullet points. I respectfully have a different opinion from Frank and from the gentleman guest speaker. I think I was confused when I saw the plan, and that the contingencies being on one section on the other seemed backwards, opposite for me, and we just have a difference of opinion, I think. It sounds like the committee thought connecting across the railroad was the most important segment. I think connecting Statesville to Old Statesville is the most important. And I'm still a little confused as if you're going to propose it, I'm not even sure why there's 3 segments. I mean, just propose a road, at least from my perspective. I'm confused why this is contingent on that and this is contingent on that. So if we get to that point, I don't know. If we propose the plan as is, I might object to that. But I see it differently. I think the most important part is connecting the 2 highways if we're worried about traffic.
Yeah, so I will support the east-west connector. I mean, I would not recommend the town board take that off. The committee put it there for a reason, and I'm not going to second-guess what their reason was. Again, I just have a concern about property owners when you draw a line on a map for a road. They are impacted.
Frank, I hate to belabor the point, but when the plan started, that was a solid line. That was, this road is recommended. The committee took it downward to a potential if contingencies are met. So the actions of the plan watered down the recommendation from it being a definite, let's put a road here, to maybe we'll put a road here. So again, I think that's a nuance that matters.
And well, thank you, Stephen. My comment to that is that this is what the committee recommended, and I'm happy with it. I'm not going to recommend that the town put a solid line and we say we're going to put a road here at this time. Again, this is a guide. Who knows what's going to happen in the future?
This is probably just clerical, but on the contingencies, Segment A is contingent upon B and C being fully funded and constructed, and then Segment C is contingent upon A and B being fully funded and constructed. So I feel like we're just running a little Excel loop there, where they give you the error. So I don't know which one needs to go first.
Sorry, I put as many slides because I was just ready for questions. And if there's a question in there, I'm happy to try to answer it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we just need to pick, right? You say A can't be built until B and C are fully constructed, and then you say C can't be built until A and B are fully constructed.
Yeah, so this is 12A. And then 12A is independent street without the railroad crossing, so it's kind of a connection from Main Street to 115. Segment B runs through CMS property, and then ultimately works its way out to Commerce. And that is the contingency there is CMS funding for the new school and conveyance of the street right-of-way for that street, right? And then segment C, which is this part right here, which goes Sherwood over to 115, is contingent on segment A and B being complete. The street design's integrated with the Holbrook Park, because there is Holbrook Park that is right in there. Adjacent properties in Norfolk Southern approval for the railroad crossing in 2nd Street. So that's the contingencies that was recommended by the steering committee and ultimately recommended, well, the consultant too wrote that down as well.
I think what he's saying, and I saw this as well, you can't have A and C contingent upon all the other stuff being built. It doesn't, one has to go first.
Both A and C dependent on each other, according to this.
A and C are dependent on one another.
So-
Segment C,
C needs to be built, and then if you read C, A needs to be built.
So segment C is,
I mean, I agree, if
Yeah.
you're gonna build A and C at the same time.
and that would, but that's what the recommendation was, that you have section for segment C. That's going through the Holbrook Parks. Again, that's subject to A and B completion or being done at the same time. And the intent was to connect everything.
Again, what he's saying is you can't start, if you're following this logic, you cannot start A until C is funded and constructed. But C cannot be started until A and B are funded and constructed. So there's a sequencing issue. And if it's designed to be interconnected at the same time, then maybe there's that clarity that we offer, but the sequence is off.
So you could build segment A, you could build segment B, but you don't.
Build segment A because it says C needs to be done.
No, segment A is Independence Street without the railroad crossing. Continuation contingent on Norfolk Southern approval, railroad crossing and completions of B. That's just saying the whole thing has to be, that C connection is the key, is C's not gonna happen until the railroad allows it. But you can connect, you can do A and you can do B, but you can't do C until you do the whole thing. Now, if the planning board wants to make a separate recommendation from that, that's fine, but this is gonna be presented to the town board as recommended by the consultant in the steering committee. So if you wanna have something else there, we can just let the town board know the sequencing changed, if you would like to.
Yeah, that's,
Chris, his last explanation of this, it finally clicked with me. Like I follow what it's saying, but it only took about 5 times of reading it.
I still don't.
So it's just saying segment A is an independent road. That's it. Like, stop. There should be a period even or something, right? Then any continuation from, and Jack, correct me if I'm not nailing this here, any continuation off of that independent street, which is segment A, is contingent upon all the rest of that stuff. So A is just do what you want, like,
Okay,
yeah, so there should be
punctuation mark
a comma, yeah.
after railroad. Could clarify that.
and honestly, one of the times I read it, because street is capitalized, it just in my head, I read it right on by as we're calling it Independent Street. Because both are capitalized. So, I mean, if we really want to tear this apart, but Jack, that's what you mean, right? Just, it is a flat-out independent road, all on its own. If you want to do anything with it from there, though, now you have those contingencies. Is that,
A is an independent street.
yeah,
B can happen as long as it has approval from the CMS and they dedicate the right-of-way. C, which connects A and B, can only occur if Norfolk Southern gives the okay for the railroad crossing. That's how it's proposed in the plan.
gotcha.
If that's the intention, do you even need the completion of segment B and C part in that state? It's going to automatically be connected.
I think it's
All 3 segments,
more like just a footnote if you want to do anything from there type deal.
but it will be connected. It'll be connected to segment C.
I suppose.
I would say we should wordsmith it or recommend a change, so because it's obviously confused at least 4 people after reading it 10 times. So it will confuse people in the future.
And we could do that. What I would encourage, I mean, I know we're not going to do this with the whole report, but I think the goal overall of what we're looking at is more the high-level stuff versus very specific verbiage on that. I mean, if we all, aside from the wording, let's put it this way, do we all now understand what was meant? I mean, are we good at least with the intentions aside from the wording?
Well, I think I understand the intent, but I guess the question is that we had to go through this discussion to get to that point. So there might be something there. Is it worth us wordsmithing it here now? No. But it's an item to note, and we all need to look at that, and we'll talk to Jack about it offline, and then whatever solution is at the next meeting.
Okay, I'll make a note.
Also of note, number 1, right there at the top, Gilead Road is not widened. It is designed as a multimodal street and includes on-street parking. That was Jack's exact reference of how the committee had incorporated that, so.
Okay. Jody, did you have something?
The only question is, do we want it contingent on the railroad? I mean, isn't that what it's saying too? Do we want it contingent on the railroad? Is that something we want to, I mean, or do we want to just connect even if the railroad does not approve?
First, this is just a few words kind of summarizing that. Really, if you go to page 4 of your handout, that's the details, and I apologize, I didn't go to that to start with. So that's, page 4 is the contingency. Okay, so, and you go to the third column in the right-hand segment A, between Old Statesville Road and Main Street. Note, segment A may be implemented as independent street prior to segments B and C. Now, it does say key contingent items per continuation of the east-west. The continuation of it is east-west connector segments B and C are fully funded and constructed. B, Norfolk Southern approves the railroad crossing at 2nd Street. So that's for the continuation of that street, right? So I just wanted to point out that this is kind of the abbreviated section. It's more better described on page 4. If you would like, we're more than happy to look at it to try to avoid any confusion that's there. But this is the recommendation from the consultants and the steering committee, and if you have anything different or just like it but want it clarified, that's fine.
Okay. I would say from that, given the more detailed explanation is here, if that's something that still wants to get wordsmithed, we got almost 4 weeks to approach this, and it can come up at our regular board meeting. Aside from that, Jody, did you have anything else besides that? No? Okay. East-West Connector, I just want to say it's a dotted line. I'm fine with it being a dotted line. It's just, it's there. It's good to think ahead. And yes, I know it was downgraded.
Okay.
All right. Next one, in terms of our ranking from last week, being pedestrian friendly. And there was a couple facets to this. There was reference to walkability, to being bike friendly. We even weaved in greenway access was on that list as well. So I thought I would break it up in this fashion. There is going to be a little bit of overlap to number 3 when we talk about streetscape. I can see it overlapping a little bit, but that's okay. We'll do our best in separating it out. So those that spoke about being pedestrian friendly, who wants to throw some commentary out?
Well, I know I mentioned it was one of my points. Going back through the plan and looking at it, I think those have been addressed. They're addressed in this plan. Specific intersections for safe crossings, the fact the recommendation for mid-block crossing sites, those things all do that. And I think I would think I'll go to a Greenway Commission meeting, and because I know that they're on top of this already. So they're going to want it that way, and that's what their job is. I just dwell in that world sometimes, and so does Chris. So from memory, and I just want to make sure, and I think it is. I think the plan adequately covers it as a guide.
This was also one I brought up, and big picture, I love the plan. First of all, thank you all for the effort you put in here. And I kind of view it as if there were specifics in here that we had issues with, we probably should have taken it up while they were doing their work. So I kind of look at this as this is a great piece of work. So now, from our standpoint, I look at, okay, what can we do as a town that can move this forward? And I think there's some smaller things, or not always small, but like, prioritize bicycle and pedestrian facilities. That was one I said, I think one of our recommendations should be is, okay, this is a great plan. In addition, it's a great plan that we support. We think that the priorities that the town should look at are 1 through 5 or 1 through, whatever it may be. So we can kind of prioritize what we really like about this and what items in here can really help move the whole thing forward. I think by the town investing in, pedestrian, bikeways, pedestrian, all, makes it a more livable, walkable, enjoyable downtown. And I think by doing that, hopefully you'll see developers come in that will want to add to that and hopefully develop some nice projects. So that was part of my comment, was just let's find some things we can prioritize, and that'd be part of our recommendation.
What are you asking to prioritize?
No, I'm viewing this as part of our job here, or I view part of our job here is to come up with those priorities as a board. Like, what do we think the priorities should be? Look how thick this is. We can't, it's one thing to say, I like all this. It's another thing to say, I like all this, and I really think we need to have these 5 or 10 or whatever you think it may be that says we think the town should focus their efforts in money.
Give me an example.
Bicycle and pedestrian. There is a section that talks about the sidewalks, improving the sidewalks.
Is that not on this timeline?
He's saying that,
We need to do that in addition to the numbers that they have.
Yeah, I think this was, their timeline kind of talks about what could be done, and beyond this we're a board to make recommendations. So I think our recommendation should be is, hey, we agree with this, and we think we should prioritize whatever it is we think. And we may all think something different.
I think I know where you, excuse me, Stephen. I think I know where you're going with that, but we're focused right now on this downtown master plan as an entity. That's what it is. But it exists as the town as a whole. It's only one plan. So when all this is said and done, where do each one of these fit in priority for the entire town? Not just what's down. I know there's going to be priorities for what happens downtown, but in relationship to everything else in this town, all the other plans and all the other projects, what has priority? And that's what the town, because that comes down to money, and that's what the town board will decide that. Now, yeah, I can, as a citizen, can I? I'm not sure I'm ready to sit down and start prioritizing items off this to ask the board to look at those before they look at anything else. Because I want to think of the entire scheme, not just the downtown plan.
I'm not necessarily saying we say, hey, guys, drop everything else. We love this plan so much, don't do anything until you do these 5 items. It's just out of all this, let's focus on things that, again, it's the first step. What's the first thing after you have this thing? What is the first thing we can do that moves it forward?
I had that same thought too. Like, I wanted dates on these studies. Like, I like the plan, but I feel like it's gonna go somewhere and kind of fizzle out after it gets voted on. And if nobody's held accountable, with dates and order of things, then it may not happen. But I don't think that's within our purview.
May I say one more thing? Yeah. I think that, I don't think anybody's going to forget about them. I think Jack and the planning department are well involved in this, and they're the ones who are pointing out this. Jack's the one, the planning department are the people that have come up with this timeline, and they understand it in perspective of the entire town, and they know what takes money, what doesn't take money, what takes time, what doesn't, but it's all money. I don't want to start prioritizing what should or should be done unless the planning department comes to us and says this is what we're considering, and asking us to prioritize some of it.
So I would just offer to you that the steering committee from day one wanted to make sure things can be implemented and not just be a plan put on a shelf. Through that entire 13-month process, certain things rose to the top in terms of what the recommendation is. So as you go to this page of the plan, it outlines what, this happens to be the title called Potential Key Catalytic Projects, key projects that could happen. And it's, under these different categories here. And you'll look at the year time frame. I mean, they extend out pretty far. But the point I would make is we're getting ready to prepare our budget for fiscal year 23-24. That starts July 1. You'll notice some of these solid lines start in fiscal year 23-24. So those are projects that we're going to be starting to put into the budget. So my point here is, number one, the committee wanted a plan that is the town board wanted a plan, everybody wanted a plan that's implementable. We took the many, many different recommendations and put them in this chart. This is the key catalytic projects, which that goes out to a 15-year time frame. This was something I shared with the board during the retreat, that these things that were highlighted, if there's a yellow shading, that's something we'll put in the budget for this upcoming request, right? So we're already getting ready to prepare our budget. An example is the stormwater. There was a recommendation to have a regional stormwater plan. And so that's one of the things we're going to be hiring a consultant to do. If you see just a box with a red around it that's not shaded, that's something staff could do internally. This happens to be the potential key town initiatives, and these are the ones that are supposed to be starting this fiscal year. Now, they don't finish this fiscal year. It's an ongoing process, but the point I want to make is, if you have any interest in commenting in priorities, you can look at this chart and say, why don't you move this up or whatever. You don't have to do it tonight, but this chart lays out the priorities. We will be preparing a budget based on this. Through that budget, then things will happen. But do understand the town board has many, many, many requests: police, fire, public works. I mean, so we'll be competing with all these other departments, and you just have to trust the town board is going to adopt a budget that they can do and keep our taxes and at a reasonable rate. I mean, you're not going to do everything. So, but if you have questions or concerns about anything, the priorities that are in the plan, you've got the list. Let us know. But we will be taking steps to start to implement as we're preparing our budget. Does that help clarify? Okay.
More on pedestrian-friendly topics. Yes.
Sorry, it came to me, not to belabor the east-west, but Jack or Stephen, do you recall the contingency being based on the school? For what reason?
Well, the majority of the road goes through CMS. CMS has consideration of replacing that school. And so if that road is to occur, CMS has to build the new school and then dedicate the right-of-way to make it happen, because that's where the majority of that road's going through. And if you looked at the bond projects, now understand that's just the draft plan for, the largest in the state of North Carolina. That replacement of Huntersville Elementary is in that top 40 projects at this point in time. But things can change. So it is in the draft of the bond referendum. That replacement school is up there. There's a new school on Stumptown Road, middle school, and then replacement of North Meck High School is also on that.
So it's sort of contingent on using CMS land, not necessarily the school having to be built, but
so just so everybody understands, this east-west road goes through the property. We knew that CMS, before we knew the priorities, was looking to replace Huntersville Elementary School because of its age. And so we worked with them to say, do you have a prototype school design that could work here and we could run a road, find a win-win circumstance. And so the plan that shows how that prototype school, what could work and how that road could work. So, yeah, all that needs to happen for that to
And
take place.
the solid line is from the consultants. That's not from Huntersville Traffic.
The solid line, which
He
solid?
said the east-west connector went from a solid to a dotted
Oh,
line.
because initially that road was on there because that was in the 2040 plan as being, this, you see these dark blue roads? It was just treated like, these are future roads. The dark blue are kind of like future roads that ought to happen. And that issue is, just as it is being discussed here, it was a major part of the discussion. And ultimately, the committee said, we could live with this road, but there needs to be contingencies, which are built into the plan. And the consultant marked it as, this is a special road. Something has to happen. It's not just going to be a road that we're putting on the plan and then implement. It has to fall under those contingencies as recommended by the plan. So that's why it got the special color designation from being just, yep, this is a future road and we're putting it here.
Will it go back to Huntersville Transportation and change on their list of priorities? Going from a solid to a dotted?
So first off, this road is not on
Okay,
the town transportation priorities at all.
okay.
Right, so it won't affect anything.
So to that point, it's currently not on the CIP, of course. It's not going to be on the CIP.
No, it's not going to be on the CIP. We don't know if CMS is going to replace the school. Is that when they get ready to vote on the bond, will that replacement school happen? Is it going to get bumped? There are just so many things that are out there that, yes, it is not going to be in this year's CIP. It probably is not going to be in there for quite a while, if it makes it. Segment A could be that, right? Yeah, Segment A, but
Only if Section C is built first, and then only if Section A is built.
To be fair, getting to Frank's point, this is the downtown plan, but there is road projects that our Engineering and Public Works Department had that have been on the list for several years. So it doesn't mean that because it's in this plan, it gets adopted, it's going to bump other things out. So it's just going to fall where it falls when there's financial capability to program something.
Jack, before you take your crystal ball and sit back down, you mentioned that current priorities for CMS, top 40 or 40%?
The top 40 projects, this was in that top 40 projects.
And then
to be funded with the biggest bond referendum in the state of North Carolina.
Yeah, and then to follow up on that, historically, does that mean those are usually funded in the next 2 years or 10 years or 20 years? Just trying to get, an idea around if everything aligned and it stayed in the top 40 and the bond.
In the event the bond referendum passes, then they start prioritizing which schools go first. And then if, unfortunately, costs go up, and what they projected would be the cost of the 40 schools is now they're only going to be able to build 22 or 27, then things get pushed back. That's just the way it works. So, and also it could be that this bond package is so big that they might have to peel it back and then do the top 20 projects. So it is, even if it gets passed, they did not prioritize in their list which ones are the most important. So I can tell you I have no idea. Maybe a 2 to 7 year, 10-year time frame for the next bond that it might happen, but there is so many things that have to fall into place for that to occur.
Some additional context on this. Going back to the original plans, there was the low plan, the medium density plan, the high density plan, the 3 plans that later evolved into one. This was a solid line that had 2 possible layouts. One was south of that proposed school, another was north of the school, proposed, like, close, where the Greenway and closer to that neighborhood. This was the more popular of those layouts because it got it further away from the neighborhood. But members of the committee did not want that road, so that's why they put in the contingencies to, that it must meet all of these criteria, tying back to the comments I had made about the belief if it doesn't cross the railroad, it doesn't have any value. That was how it evolved to get to this point.
Just so we're clear, if you look at the map behind, so if you look at the downtown, I mean, the 2040 plan, that road, as Steve said, went this way, back that way. And the committee did not like that, and CMS didn't like that. And so we worked with CMS, and that's kind of how, so it got further away from the neighborhood, and it fit CMS's potential for redevelopment of that school, and that's how it got the location where it's at.
This is the line and a type of line that the committee came up with. So, you know, I mean, not everything. I mean, I don't know that I need to know a complete history of their decision-making, just what was their decision in some cases to go through. But that was good. Good to know. Thank you very much, Jack.
Okay, hopefully we're all set with the east-west connector. Still a dotted line? Still a dotted line, all right. Pedestrian friendly, last things before we jump to the next topic. We're good, okay. Number 3 was, I just summarized it as streetscape. So there was discussion of downtown entrances, not just for the beautification factors, I guess we'll call it, but as much as it would be to let people know that they're entering somewhere different, both as I understood it from folks here from last week, in the sense of almost a bit of a marketing of downtown, but also in terms of traffic calming to a certain sense. Jody, I believe that was you, where it was this sort of, these are demarcations of, you know, the north-south and the east-west, and once you enter that, have it be where it's understood that this is where you slow down, and this is where you become the guest, and this is where people, pedestrians, are first.
And it's on the mobility part at the bottom. So it really does say to make the gateway into the space, which not necessarily at the roundabouts, but the gateway's on there. So I think that's kind of nice that it's mentioned in the plan.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so it was important to have that look and feel and add some identity to the corridor. Where I think that this ties in somewhat back to number 2 and being pedestrian friendly is, of course, as well with the additional sidewalks and the walkability behind it, mid-street crossings, like you mentioned, Frank. So that is the overlap there. But any discussion on something related to streetscape?
Yeah, the parking.
That's
Transition.
Thank you. So transitioning into number 4, because I felt, I knew you were passionate about it, so I wanted to give it its own number. Parking, Frank, number 4, take the lead.
It's not a matter of passion. It's like some of the things you heard Jack say last week about trying to control the traffic coming through town. How do you keep speed down? How do you move the traffic? We talked about, you know, in our world growing up and still today, business downtown wants to have impulse buyers pull into a parking spot and go in their store and buy something and leave. So, you know, the question is, did in-street parking, Jack, was that emphasized to your satisfaction in this plan?
Right, so the plan does recommend on-street parking on multiple roads. They are DOT roads, so that is not always something to get past. Now, you might say, well, how come on that same road in Davidson they have on-street parking? Well, they already have it. But, you know, that would be what we have to deal with NCDOT on if we're talking about Gilead Road, if we're talking about Old Statesville Road. You know, there's some parking on Main Street that was substantially changed from what was there, but that had to happen. But there is parking on Main Street, which is a town road, so that is under our control and we can do. But yes, I mean, and then the other thing is, you know, that the new town hall has a significant parking lot that, you know, on off hours is a big help, I guess you would say, to activities in the downtown, right? So, you know, on the weekends, Veterans Park activities, you'd have a nice parking lot associated with the town hall that could be used. You've got the deck over here with town center that could be used. So, I mean, that's a whole component of, you know, a comprehensive parking issue that you're trying to resolve. So, did I answer your question?
Yes, sir, you did, about on-street parking. But a question about looking at Town Hall and looking at the plan and listening to the discussions for Town Hall, and that's part of this plan, is not specifically the building of the new Town Hall, but the fact that where it's located. It has a spot for parking. My understanding now is there's a parking lot, but not a parking deck planned.
So that is correct. So Town Hall, so we can use this plan right here. Sorry, you have to break your necks to look at this, but this is existing Town Hall where we're at. This blue is the new Town Hall. And this comprehensive plan, or this downtown plan, says the potential is this is a catalytic project here, and there might be a private developer that comes to the table and looking to maybe build the road, and we can partner with them to put the deck out there. So unless that catalytic partner comes, you know, it's going to be at-grade parking. And I probably, and I apologize for going through. I got so many slides, I just didn't know what you might want to see. But that's the plan as it is today.
Well, just some comments we made last week when we talked. Which, by the way, just make a statement now, I don't have a problem with the plan calling for 3 or 4 story buildings. It's a guide. That could change some places depending on where the site is and what the purpose of the building is. That's a totally different subject. But we made a comment that if you don't build up, you got to build out. So if you don't build up and build at least a 2-layer or more parking deck, you're going to build out. You're going to end up in the long run with more space taken up by parking than you are going to by commercial or buildings.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, you share parking, right? That's the ideal. The churches, they're not used. The town civic offices, you use those when they're not in use. I mean, you don't build, the worst thing you can do is build for, you know, Thanksgiving weekend, you know, and have a sea of parking that's sitting out there, you know, not used for a majority of the day. So you don't want to overpark, but you want to have convenient parking that would encourage people to come, park once, and walk. That's what we want to do.
All right, well, I'll concede that maybe the discussion on the town hall and whether it has a parking deck or not, that's a different subject than approval of the master plan. That's consideration for the town board.
So the master plan does conceive that possibly there could be a deck there, but it takes an economic partner to make that happen. You know, public-private partnership. So that was talked about a lot by the committee. You know, hey, if somebody comes to the door and you can make something happen, do it. And that's what's depicted in the plan.
That's all I have. Thank you very much.
So they do mention street parking in the mobility study. What was the discussion? What did they talk about, Stephen? Like, where are they going to put it?
I think that's what the discussion was, where they're going to put it. There's a lot of frustration from certain members of the committee about the loss of the on-street parking on Main Street. and then running our heads up against the wall of, well, as Jack highlighted, Davidson gets to do it, why can't we? And is that something that can we take control over that? Do we have any authority, or have we run out of on-street parking on the main two arteries? Well, then where do you put it? So there was a substantial desire for it, but what are the realities? A lot of unknowns.
Any more on parking? No, all right. We're making good time here, guys. Last one I left open for miscellaneous. I mean, there was a couple things that were one-off from last week from individuals here. If there's one of those you want to revisit, if there's something new that you want to bring up for discussion, whatever, now would be the chance.
Can we talk some more about the east-west?
I
Do you want to change the color of the dotted line, or
Oh my God.
is it okay?
Should we debate whether it's pink or purple on the map?
So the only thing that after we left, I looked at this again. I still love this plan, but when you guys were talking about the height, I was looking at this and there's no hotels. And I think this would be kind of an ideal place for a hotel. Do those 3-floor story limitations, do they detract from a hotel potentially coming in and saying, hey, we'd like to move into the downtown?
I mean, from my perspective, I would think it can definitely be done with 4. I've seen it in other towns this size, if you will, around the country, and where you have more of a village type setup and then it ends up being more of a boutique hotel and that type of thing. You know, those same areas that I've personally seen, I mean, they were very activated at that point. So, I mean, I certainly think that has to happen. I mean, the only one that I can think of close by, Davidson has that one, right? In downtown Davidson. I have no idea of the business they do. I don't know. So, but
It was just our conversation last
Yeah.
week. We were looking at hotels and then rolled right into this. So all of a sudden I was like, oh, I wonder how that would fit. So I didn't know if that was something we wanted to discuss or not.
I'll just say we have a number of hotels that are, 3 and 4 stories. So it could work. And in the smaller footprint is what was desired here. There is one hotel that was approved with a special use permit to go up to 6 stories where the Birkdale driving range was at. And of course, then across the street in Birkdale, that's still an issue that's out there, but that hotel actually has gone away from their plan, so that's out of the mix. But that's more on a highway, not in a downtown setting. So I think the Davidson is a good example, but a smaller boutique, absolutely, we have them along highways. It could absolutely work here at a 4-story.
So following up on that point, I was going to ask the question, you've already answered half of it. So you can go taller than 4 stories for the hotel with a special use permit, but only in certain zoning districts.
Commercial.
Only highway commercial? So to do that in town, you would have to propose a text amendment to allow that also in town center, and that would, okay. So,
Yeah, well, I would, so the point was, or you could rezone the property. Well, I don't think you're going to find downtown get rezoned to highway commercial, anything in there. So I don't think that would happen. So it would be a text amendment, and I'll just say that's what Birkdale Village is trying to do. They were trying to do that. Now they just switched to a conditional rezoning. So, anyways, things would have to change in order for you to go beyond 4 stories at this point in time. A 4-story could work. We have multiple examples around town. So I'll just leave it at that.
Cool. All right, well, I guess I have a question for you too, Jack. It's not, excuse me, we're getting your steps in today, I'm sorry. One thing that I saw when I went back through the plan and I looked at the chart, project chart, I asked 1 or 2 members if overhead versus buried utility lines had been discussed in any way, and I discussed this with you today earlier. I don't know that needs to be in this plan, but I think, I'm asking a question really, does it need some visibility in this plan? The overhead. And I understand we have that issue in other parts of the town. There's other parts of the town you still have overhead power lines that aren't in the town center. But being the town center and doing a master plan, should that be included in some way in this plan?
It does not have to be. It's the town's policy to get lines underground, particularly as property groups redevelop. So that's why you see lines underground over there, town center. They'll be doing some on Gilead Road further down. Right. It's a very expensive process, but if the planning board says we endorse this plan and we also want you to prioritize getting power lines underground, that's fine if you want to.
And I didn't go back and look at an OCIP in the budget, but is the transfer of overhead utility lines to underground buried lines, are they in the CIP? Who pays for that?
Well, in the downtown area, this is served by Electricity, so that's where it comes from, is from Electricity's budget.
And who gives them their money? They earn it.
The town board oversees Electricity's.
Okay. I'll leave that at this, and we can discuss whether something needs to be said when we finally come up to a motion. And the last thing is, in the living part of this plan, there's a reference to talking about, these are the neighborhoods that are in the 1/4 mile to 1/2 mile range. Do you have a slide for that, Jack, that shows the existing adjacent neighborhoods? I know you got a slide for everything. There you go. Those neighborhoods, they're referenced in the plan. It says, be respectful of existing neighborhoods. Another place, it says, existing neighborhoods located adjacent to downtown are respected in strict accordance with current zoning designations. Those neighborhoods are within 1/4 mile to 1/2 mile of the downtown center. It just seems that as the downtown develops and grows, that those areas are also their development is going to change. Granted, they'll probably stay all residential like they are, but the interest in those and the value of that land will go up. People will sell, then they'll come in and start building. How do we protect those existing adjacent neighborhoods like we protect the existing neighborhoods like Magla Mills and Puttstown? Those same people in Sherwood Forest and...
Yeah, so the area that we're talking about is this kind of number. You see that number 1 and how it's shaded, and you see it. So that's the areas you want to protect. So the recommendation is don't rezone those properties, right? They got general residential, lower density zoning. Don't change the zoning on those properties. But, 20 years from now, I don't know what's going to happen when the next plan gets done, right? Who knows what's going to happen? But I can assure you this, if we built in that 1/4 mile area, which is this right here, and do a good job, that'll be a really nice downtown. Let me tell you, that would be a fantastic downtown, just in that 1/4 mile. So the other line that you'll see on the plan is the 1/2 mile. That goes all the way to the roundabout to roundabout. But that 1/4 mile is where the town board wanted the committee to focus on, and so that's the focus of it. And again, as it gets near those neighborhoods, avoid the rezoning.
And I understand that was the purpose of this whole master plan. I'm just saying cause and effect. There's, when you do one thing, it causes something else to happen. Those, unlike other neighborhoods in the town, these are right adjacent to downtown. They're going to be impacted big by what happens in the downtown area. And somewhere, I just would like to see, maybe it doesn't have to be, some level of protection for those areas, just like Pottstown would get, for example, as being under this plan, because you can use the references of what you were trying to do with the downtown master plan. I'd like to see those existing neighborhoods also have a level of protection.
So, I mean, they have lower density zoning today. So the only way it changes is if it gets rezoned. And I can assure you it would be a well-attended meeting if they tried to rezone those properties.
Well, that's all I have. Thank you very much, Jack.
Jack, before you sit down, there's a couple references to wayfinding signage in here. Do you know how much detail that went into, and is it in an action item? I think it's a good idea. In other words, I take Veterans Park, for instance. I mean, what a great asset to the town. And I bet majority of people that live north of Charlotte or north of Huntersville, in Huntersville, drive down 115 and never even know that's over there, that there's movie night or whatever. So I think we got some gems we should point out.
So, yeah, so we even have, not through this plan, but designs of the wayfinding. So the kind of typical thing you might see in a downtown. Mooresville's got a really good example of it, Davidson. There's multiple towns with examples. So the answer to that question is, yes, we intend to implement, wayfinding signage.
Before he sits down then, could you go back actually to the slide that was up before this one? It kind of focused on the southwest quadrant. So maybe I'm behind on this, but it showed there's the road that goes south of the parking deck through the current fire station. It wasn't this slide.
Not the, you're talking about the southeast?
If I misspoke, I'm sorry. It's that area, but it was color-coded, and it showed that Brightly Street Extension was approved.
There is no approved street for Brightly Street. That's just a concept. Now, let me see if I can find another plan that might have it.
Yeah, right. It says 8, Holbrook Street Extension. Okay. Yeah, and there's and the key on this one, I think it was one more slide back, perhaps. Yeah, the color code, that adopted new street, construction pending. Right through the fire station.
No, that is not an adopted new street. That needs to be changed. That is not an adopted street.
Okay.
So thank you for pointing that out.
Can you make it dotted too? I'm just kind of.
We will definitely show it not as adopted and that it is a potential future street. It would be probably in that blue color as a potential.
Cool.
I had one more note that I picked up on when I was reading. Page 5, general infrastructure systems, they reference, recognize the Wasatch existing water basin and the time limit, affecting the eastern development. I think the Charlotte Water Clark Creek was supposed to address that as well. I don't know if we want to add that, the Clark Creek pump station and.
Yes, so what you're getting at is that Charlotte Water has an interim plan, if you will, to pump sewer that's on the east side over to the west side until such time as the sewer plant in Cabarrus County can be improved. So which section are you talking about on page 5?
Page 5 in the middle, 3/4 of the way down, general infrastructure systems. I mean, it just speaks to the Water Sewer Authority of Cabarrus County, and I didn't know if we needed to add the Clark Creek project on there as well.
No, I would say not, because what that's doing is saying, just understand there's a limitation there is. That limitation as it exists today, Charlotte Water does have plans and is in the process of well, I think we already issued a permit for that pumping station to be installed, but then they have to install it and then get it online, and they're not approving projects yet. I think they're letting the queue come in. So it's just putting everybody on notice that you can't just walk in the door and pull a permit in that drainage basin. And so I don't believe it needs to be changed.
Okay.
Well, we're coming down to this now. Jack, on page 18, it's on several pages, but page 18 is the one I'd go to. It's in the, really, it's in the southeast quadrant, so either one of those. What I was, yeah, there you go back. In the southeast quadrant here, number 5, that's Hunter Village Assisted Living. I was kind of confused because number 7 says a regional stormwater facility. Now, is that an underground B&P or something?
No, that is, unfortunately, if you look at number 5, that happens to be where the land sets it to be the spot. But that can't happen unless there's a willing seller and a willing buyer. So that's one of the things in this plan that it talks about. If you look at the front, and I pointed out, it is, you know, you're not taking people's property. There has to be a willing seller, willing buyer. We are going to put in the budget for a stormwater analysis to see if we could do a regional ponds, where we could do them. We have, unfortunately, there's multiple drainage basins. It's not just doesn't all go to one place. It has multiple places. So, that's where it's shown right now, but some extraordinary events have to happen for that building to ever go away. I don't know that that answers your question.
Well, it does, because I mean, I used to make maps one time in my life, is one of the things I did, and that just sort of confused me when I saw it in the middle of the pond. That's okay, it could be a floater, I don't know. But no, I just thought it might have been a mistake. I was just double checking, that's all.
And again, if we can do the study, it gets further refined, and that's what's going to need to happen.
Got a couple questions, Jeff. Reading the executive summary, I mean, that was a chore in itself. I mean, that was very well put together. So I ended up spending a lot of time on that, and it really is neat to talk about those next steps. You know, even to the detail of, you know, street design, you know, and how these streets could, you know, because we've got different types of streets, you know, multi-use streets, DOT streets, town streets, but it was really nice to see the level of detail of, you know, what those could look like. And, you know, the same thing with, like Jack was mentioning with the stormwater study, there's so many pieces of this, in so many action plans that it's going to be, you know, a tough decision for the town board to, you know, begin implementing these. They're very big items. And Jack, I did have a question real quick on when I was looking at the plan on some of the thoughts behind sort of that second ring where the residential, there's a lot of things that say, you know, apartments, attached homes, et cetera, et cetera. What was some of the discussion there? Was it to different types of housing, or to identify, you know, like apartment sites that are sort of up there in the north?
You say up in the northern part?
Yeah, I believe where the 3-4 is. I believe that was.
The 3-4. So first and foremost, if it's just apartments, it's a 3-story building max. But if they do mixed use, they go to 4 stories.
Sure.
So the heights, you know, capped out at 4 stories, and that's per the existing zoning. And there were plans that showed could we go to 6 stories, and that just was not deemed acceptable. So so come with the 4 stories for mixed use. And let's see here, I've got. What I did was, I don't know if Jay, is this, let me just see if I'm understanding what you're talking about. So if you look at the screen, Jay, up here, is this the area?
Yeah, that's it.
Right. So you can kind of see, try to blow it up cross-hatched, but that's mixed-use buildings. If you're going to go 4 stories, you got to get mixed-use buildings. If you want a residential, you could do 3 stories maximum.
And I would assume that, you know, some of the areas where it shows, it identifies as like attached housing, that would still be, you know, based on the subdivision ordinance with a certain max of, say, attached housing, you know, like the 30%, like for townhomes, for example.
Right, so townhomes are limited to no more in a major subdivision, 30% of the homes could be attached. And so that still would apply. Now, if you'll note, you know, you could have some townhomes on different parcels that, just like a 4-unit townhome or something like that. So you could do something of that nature.
Yeah.
You know, in this area, but, yeah, if you're a major subdivision, you're gonna be limited to 30% attached.
That's all for now.
All right, any other, Chris, you got?
I just wanted to see if Jack could walk through the process of what drives the development, right? Obviously, this stormwater study is that one. If you go back to that initiative and y'all's conversation around that, I'm sure you guys fully vetted that, but I just wanted you to step through that process. What drives the development?
What drives the development? So it depends on who the developer is. So we're talking to somebody who wants to build one small building on one lot, and they're gonna handle their stormwater. As a matter of fact, it's so small, they wouldn't even have to put stormwater in. So that's one thing. Then you have, not to pick on Jay, but just to say, you know, this project here that was done on Gilead Road right by the school. I mean, that was a mixture of uses, townhomes, commercial, renovation of an existing house. That required a rezoning, but the design fit what we were looking for, kind of smaller footprint, so that could happen. It would not surprise me if some bigger developers might be talking about one of these catalytic projects that had come in the door. And so let's just say town hall. So we're going right here. You know, I'm not sure what all is for sale out here, but I will tell you there's a lot of folks looking at things. And so it's possible when you get something where you know, there might be a deck involved, you know, they're going to be knocking on our door and talking to the manager and the mayor and the commissioners about something of that nature. It's zoned already for that, so it could happen. So that doesn't necessarily have to be rezoned to do that type of thing. The only thing they would have to do rezoning is if they wanted to get some kind of modification of existing codes, then they'd have to get maybe get some height exemption of something like that. But where do we go from here? So we don't have the regional stormwater, so anybody that walks in the door before we have the regional solution, they're going to have to treat their stormwater on their property. And so when things are tight, it goes underground, under parking lots generally. You know, and that's going to be the nature, but no big developers are knocking on my door, but I understand that some might be coming soon about a catalytic project. Jay, do you want, I mean, you did a development. Do you want to about that?
As far as the status or
Well, no, status and just the process of.
We, we treat, like, from a stormwater standpoint, we treated all of ours on site. And it was all underground, under the parking lot with pavers. That's the plan. I think a benefit of the regional ponds, I think that's big from an economic development standpoint, because a lot of the smaller infill sites, when you add them all up, can make a difference. Some of them may not even qualify for needing any type of stormwater treatment. A larger site may, and a lot of the sites right in town are very flat. And, some of the town infrastructure, some of it's, older, and it's hard to get some of the drainage patterns to work. So getting the stormwater out is a big problem with ponds because they have to be so deep. So having these regional ponds and, being able to basically buy into them, I think would be a great benefit.
And I will say the code was amended several years ago that then allowed folks to put money towards it. So in other words, we have a legal mechanism today that they could pay into a regional stormwater solution.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out what else are we forgetting that might take these developers to your office quicker, right?
Well, I mean, I'll just say that the plan doesn't require rezoning for these folks that want to come in and do development. That helps. So if you have fewer steps, I mean, I know you went through a 4.5-month process, and that was because his property was not right in the town center area, but what was proposed made sense and got reviewed. So anything you can do to remove barriers is helpful. So if you don't have to rezone the property, that's helpful. If we find some regional stormwater solutions and allow money, that's kind of another thing that would be helpful. Yeah, so road improvements are a big deal. I'm going to, Town Hall is being proposed. They are impacting NCDOT roads. DOT might require turn lanes. That's a big deal. That could be a deal breaker to some projects, turn lanes and things of that nature. And quite frankly, in some cases, they might be going against what we want in our downtown, to be frank with you. So that's an impediment that we have. That's just and we'll work with folks to try to be intermediaries with NCDOT. We've done it before. An example I'll give you is North State. Initially, when North State came in, NCDOT wanted I'm going to call it a deceleration lane. So as you're coming from Gilead and you're coming to the downtown, they were actually talking about cutting a lane into the sidewalk so that cars could get out of the flow of traffic and traffic could keep flowing. And that would eat into the public walking space. And so that did not make sense to us for a walkable downtown. I'm having that discussion actually with Town Center. The turning radius that it takes for you to turn your car in, we're down to the minutest of details now. I'm sorry if I'm getting too tight, but every detail counts. So if you have a wide turn lane so that cars can go fairly fast going in, an example would be over at Town Center. I mean, it's made for buses. But I could literally, well, I'm not going to tell you how fast I can go, but I can go pretty fast to get in there. I can get in there fast. But the walking public has a much wider place to walk across. So the point I'm making is, working with individual developers, we're wanting to kind of keep things small and pedestrian friendly, down to that level. How do you turn in off the street? Is it slow? And car has to slow down. Everybody else slows down and turns in. That's exactly what we want. That's a speed hump without a speed hump, So, I'm kind of rambling in terms of what the issues are, but DOT is always a tough nut to crack to bring development in.
We don't really speak to that in here, saying that, we'll work with developers on, getting over the DOT requests or anything like that.
No, but so the plan does recommend that there be an organization, like maybe a downtown Main Street group, right, to be the advocates. They could be, and that's more marketing for businesses, marketing downtown. So it does get into that marketing. It does make recommendations in there for that. Yes.
Yeah, that's all I want, just general.
Jack, we did change a text amendment or add a text amendment a number of years ago, right? Now, I know how to describe better as an example. So, say I were to buy the building that Slice House is in and all along that I'm looking at out the window there. If I wanted to tear that down and build something new, if I match the footprint, and as I understood it, the footprint just being the square footage, not the exact shape, but if I match that or less, then I wouldn't have to do stormwater, correct?
Correct. So in other words, what you're saying is property redevelops, there's probably some impervious area out there. You get credit for that imperviousness. And it all comes down, and then you can rebuild, but say you had 20,000 square feet of parking and building. If you tore it down and built 40,000 square feet, you get credit for that 20,000, if that's what you're talking about.
Okay. All right, well, if no other miscellaneous topics, if anyone would like to make some closing comments on the plan, what we talked about tonight, go for it.
I will. We can't vote, we can't vote on this tonight, wouldn't do any good. The public hearing hasn't been held. That's not until the first meeting for the town board at the 1st of March, correct? You sat down.
No, it might not be the first of
Might be the second.
March. It's going to be up to, it might be the second meeting. It's
All
going
right.
to be up to the town board to decide, but it'll be, right, if you make a recommendation in February, then we'll work with the town board to
All
see.
right. And the reason I mention that is that if we were voting tonight, I would vote to approve this plan and move it forward to the town board as is written. And if there were some minor comments that needed to be added to the plan, I'm open to hear those. But I'm not really open, I haven't heard anything that makes me think anything significant should be changed in this plan. This committee voted, 13-0 to move this plan forward? And I'm happy with what it is. Like we said in the beginning, this is a plan, it's not concrete. Things will change over time, and that's all I got to say.
Just so I better understand on the bullet points, on the executive summary, the guideline or the timeline on those, that was set by the steering committee in conjunction with the planning staff, or is that set by the planning staff?
So that was recommended by the consultant based on feedback from the steering committee, from the staff, from the public meetings. And so, yes, we have looked at that. That is going to be subject to change because, again, if we put in for a budget request that we need $75,000 to bring in a consultant for stormwater, or $130,000 or whatever that number is, and the board can't fund it because there's so many other requests, then it's just going to be pushed back a year. So it is a draft to give you and the public, the steering committee, the town board, an idea of what's the priorities to work on first. But it is subject to change every fiscal year. That makes sense to you. And our intention would be to update that chart. It would not be, well, if they're not going to fund it this year, I'm done asking. No, it's just, you just update the chart and you keep moving.
Mr. Chairman, are we looking for, I don't think there's any, well, I shouldn't speculate. Most likely, we're not going to send this back and say we reject it, but are we looking to take amendments, or are we looking to add bullet points to the plan? I'm not sure. When we say, assuming we say the yay, are we also saying yay plus these? I think it may go back a little bit to what Scott was saying earlier in the evening about picking out parts that we like of the plan, or the best parts of the plan, or so forth.
Yeah, I would say what I would be looking for now that we're wrapping up for tonight, and so in preparation for our regular planning board meeting on February 28th, I would love for us to prepare a motion just like we will for anything else that ends up on our agenda for that meeting. I feel very comfortable with the way the conversation went tonight, that we're not going to have a problem making a recommendation and moving this forward at that meeting. So we're not going to need anything else. I don't see where it's going to become even a lengthy discussion on that night. With that, I would look for a motion, and for me, honestly, you make your motion the same way you would others, and sometimes we do add emphasis to something. Sometimes we do call out to make a point, so it's on the record for the Board of Commissioners to hear, to digest, give extra thought to. And if that is recommendations or highlighting, say, the top 3 of some type of priority, or would love to see emphasis on this, resonates as a more impactful or immediate impact type thing, then that's fine too. That's where my head's been at with that, as well, specific to it. I mean, I know I would plan to call out a couple things. I mean, it's for them to take that information, and yeah, they have to marry it up to everything else that's outside of this quarter-mile radius. So they get paid the big bucks for that, and so I'll just give them the information. So that would be my expectation for it. I don't know if anyone else thought about approaching it a different way. I mean, I'm happy to discuss it, but so that would be my goal then for when we come into our meeting, is to just be prepared for a motion, and if there's something you want to highlight, so be it. I mean, the things that we still spent the most time on in discussion was the roads and the traffic, and I think we understand the wording of East-West Connector and 12 now, and that's just going to be, I mean, if someone wants to take on some wordsmithing there, have at it. I know I'm good, and I'm even good with the color. So I'm fine with that one. When we look at Gilead, the DOT project, we may have to come together if we want to make a consensus statement on that. We probably have a little tweaking to do, because I know my individual position on it doesn't quite line up with yours, and that's obviously completely okay. I mean, we do this every meeting, and we challenge each other, and we figure it out. So that's completely fine. But if we, as a board, want to make some sort of consensus statement on that, just because it's that important to us, then we will probably have to spend a few minutes on that, come that next meeting. But I don't see that as a big thing, but that would be where I'd go. I don't even, and you made about kicking it back. I don't even know if that's allowed, and I'm not brave enough anyway. So I'm good. I would look at it this way. I'd be shocked, and I'm not going to make anyone out themselves if they feel this way. But if that committee can get to a unanimous decision, we don't have any problems.
I guess that's part of what I was inquiring about, is do we want to try to get to a consensus on some type of bullet points, as opposed to Frank making a motion with 2 bullet points, but Scott wants a motion with 3 bullet points, and then Jay wants a motion with no bullet points, then we have 3 motions, then, excuse me. 3 motions going on. I didn't know if we want to try to narrow down any of the additions, or do we not want any additions? That's kind of what those.
If you use my name, I'm going to speak.
Yeah, that's.
Now, what I meant when I said I'm open to other comments is that a lot of times you put in a motion, we recommend that the town board consider. I think we can add I have no problem with adding considerations going to the town board. We all might have different ones, but we still got, like I say that I would vote yea. We still got 2 weeks to look at this. You can see, you can hear, you can read something that impacts your decision at the next planning board meeting. So,
Greg, to your point, in the past, I had used informal straw polls of just, if you're comfortable, like, would you support this bullet point? So we don't have to go through the rigmarole, especially, I think, I can't remember the example, but it just helps, to your point, to avoid 8 different motions that spider web out, like, to feel like, all right, is this a hill worth dying on, or is this just one person that doesn't care?
Mr. Chairman, do you think it's a reasonable approach that there could be multiple motions instead of one comprehensive motion? And what I mean by that, just going back to Gilead Road, there could be a motion that says, Planning Board recommends that the town board is deliberate and thoughtful in how they approach NCDOT on Gilead Road. That's not a good motion, but, that's something I think we all kind of get behind instead of trying to, have this big, long motion that we're trying to roll everything up into. Is that a reasonable, as we all think about how we're preparing for what we're going to pass up, or do you think it needs to be put into one that we all agree on?
I don't see anyone in the room cringing when you described it that way, but I can kind of envision it. I think...
You talking about that particular topic, or?
No, just like
structure.
dicing it up, the structure. I guess in my head, I'm really looking at it where the motion's pretty simple, like the core of the motion's going to be pretty simple. It's like yes or no, but what I'm certain this group's going to end up doing is a yes, and hey, we'd like to highlight these couple things. I don't think it's going to become that unwielding that we would need to break it up. Uh-oh.
I don't have an answer for you one way or another right now, but I will say that I will check with Ms. Sloop on that and confirm whether multiple motions are allowed or possible on that, and I will let you know at the next meeting if that's something we can do.
I think that's going to be important because I think generally we're in support of this plan, but I think the east-west connector issue, whether it's going to be, someone might recommend that the contingencies be removed and it goes back to the original consultant's recommendation. We might want to separate that issue so that maybe it's a 9-0 vote for the plan and then a 5-4 or 2-7 or whatever vote for the other item. It's a consideration.
I suppose it is.
I would be opposed to that because this board, just historically, and Jack, go ahead.
So I was just wanted to clarify. The consultant ultimately landed on the recommendation from the steering committee, which was to have those contingencies. So while the initial, right at the start, yes, there was a recommendation to put the road through, but in the end, the committee came up with that language, and then the consultant preparing the plan agreed with that, and so that's what they've laid out. So I just wanted to be sure that was on the record.
No, what I was going to say, in a court of law, that Supreme Court, they have dissenting opinions, and you can have a dissenting opinion, and you can say that publicly. But we come up here, we make a motion, it's seconded, it's a valid motion, we discuss it, and if you don't like the motion, you make a substitute motion, you make your point, you get a second, and then we vote on it. If it passes, then your substitute motion is accepted, and that's what's passed on the town board. If it's not, you go back to the original motion. I don't see... I guess there are loopholes that I don't know, Jacob, but I don't know how you're going to find a place where we can write 2 motions off this board, because our duty, our responsibility is to provide a board recommendation to the town board, not 2 opinions.
Well, what I meant by that, and what I thought Scott was possibly getting at, was that you'd have a smaller motion that everyone still agreed on, but it was just a small piece that then, so you, as you were saying, wouldn't go to a whole, or it would still pass, maybe not unanimously, but it would still pass, is what I thought you were kind of saying.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of like these bills that get passed at the federal level, to appease everybody, you've got 30 things in there, which is not going to be what we do. But to get everybody, okay, I'll agree with this, if you agree with this, Steve, next thing you got this big agreement. I'm thinking, it's not going to be that many motions to begin with, I don't think. But I think we can be more specific, and the board can also see how important do we think Gilead Road is. How important does the board think bike lanes are? I don't know. I don't think it could be that cumbersome, but I think it might be an easier way versus us trying to craft a motion that just keeps putting everything in, and there's somebody like, I can't really support that. Just my opinion, trying to be as efficient as possible.
I would think, though, that in part, that's for us to flush out ahead of motion time, too. And so maybe out of respect for that, let's do, because I know, Greg, you're looking for a little something more, too. I can sense it. So why don't we figure out a few topics right now, and let's just do a couple straw polls, see where everyone's head is at, and we can chip away at some of this now and be more efficient then when we have other agenda items in front of us.
And I just want to say, the reason being, I don't want to make it more cumbersome than necessary, but at the same time, if we're simply going to say yay, then why did we just sit here and discuss it for 2 hours? And why do we have another couple of other meetings about it? And we're going to have 4 meetings just to say yay. So I was trying to, put some type of planning board feedback to the decision.
Yeah. No, and that's fine. I mean, I'll go right back down the list then, in the same order. How do I want to word this, though? So Gilead DOT project.
Jack did point out that has been included.
I know, but that's.
But do we want to emphasize it?
That's what I'm getting at. So I feel like most of us do want to emphasize, but it's how do we want to approach that? So I guess I'll just go first to set the tone, and then we'll see if there's differing opinions. I am of the opinion, personally, and as a taxpayer of this town, that I don't want to see downtown destroyed, because that is what would happen. I would love the ideal scenario that the money gets redeployed. If it does not, if it cannot be redeployed, I would be perfectly fine telling them thanks, but no thanks with their money and move on. Because you're gonna ruin our downtown. And so it seems, just to me, it seems foolish to me to spend someone's tax dollars to that level on a project that actually, I mean, it moves traffic, but you've just gutted the soul of a town for it. So that doesn't really make sense to me, especially at the cost that I can envision it running. So that would be the emphasis. Do I need to have the emphasis up to the board be as dramatic and direct? No. But I mean, just to lay it out there, that's where I'm at. Is in some fashion of that, is anyone else, is that where their head's at? Okay, and Greg, do you envision, because I want to honor this opinion, right?
I think you said it perfectly, so you don't, I agree totally with you. If we can work and see if there's any ways to if we can't, then I don't want a 6-lane highway on Gilead.
Okay, because the
I'm
clarifying
right.
question that I was going to ask you was just simply, did you envision some sort of, if you were referencing more of like some sort of compromise where not quite as wide, but sort of type thing, or was it the redeploying of funds elsewhere around town that could affect?
Oh, I would leave that up to the experts.
Okay.
I mean, Jack.
Which is fair,
Jack mentioned that he thinks it's feasible or reasonable to go back to DOT and see if there's ways to use that funding other ways, but I'm not skilled, I don't have the expertise to know where that should be. I just think it's a worthwhile effort to try.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
But I'm in agreement, if they say no, take it or leave it, then let's leave it.
Okay. All right, let's do a show of hands then for a straw poll on that. Is that the emphasis that we make as a board? All those in favor?
Emphasis, what's the emphasis?
You're going to make me write this like a motion? Come on. This is supposed to be casual.
No, I understand. But it was a long conversation, help me. So what we're saying is, this is not the downline plan, this is something we want to add to the motion?
No, it's in the plan.
Okay.
It was, well, on one of the 80 slides. It was number one on that page, that it is not to be widened. And so we're talking about drawing emphasis to a few things within the plan to make it known. And then it became, well, let's flush that out as to what they are.
I don't mind more discussion. The plan says don't widen it. So I'm happy with that at this point. I give the town board, dang it, Tracy, I'm sorry. Yell at me. I give the town board credit. I think they figured that out. I think they've heard it. And I don't know that we need to go on and on about Gilead. I think the point's made. I don't mind a comment, and I'll vote for, go ahead. But it's just adding on that I don't think needs to be added on, but we can do it, and it moves on. I respect everybody's opinions, Jeff. I love you.
God, I love this board. That's why we do this. All right, so fine, and what Frank said. Is there another one that should we decide to draw emphasis to, it would be also what?
I would be interested if there was a show of hands of who would support re-emphasizing that east-west connector, because I feel, it was part of the original plan as a way of getting traffic around downtown. And we've already now said, well, we're not going to widen Gilead. Turning down a road to connect and further grid the streets is like a man in the desert refusing a glass of water. So I would be interested in emphasizing and getting that solidly back on the plan.
So you're asking for who's in favor of turning the dotted potential road into a solid...
Recommended road.
Recommended road.
Yep.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but you suggesting to just show the road as a proposed road with no contingencies? Is that?
That is,
the
yes.
color? Let me pick the color. But if there's no contingencies, there's no need to specialize a color other
Yes.
than it's a proposed road. is
Yes.
my point. Okay, I just wanted to be clear on that.
But there still has to be a CMS contingency.
Well, yeah, it still becomes a recommended road, and if CMS says you can't build it, it doesn't get built.
General comment, I'm not necessarily in favor of trying to get here and make any wholesale significant changes to what has been presented to us. I'm in favor of us simply making a recommendation and prioritizing. I've repeated myself, just prioritizing, but not trying to get into the weeds here. And I understand the East-West is a big deal, but if we wanted to do that, we should have all been involved for the last year and died on that hill then, not now. That's all.
I mean, again, I don't know what our purpose is than to just say yay, if we can't express our opinion. Whether we say do the east-west connector as a proposed road, or whether we just say look at the east-west connector more, I would be fine with that. I mean, there's a contingency of it being dependent on approval of the railroad. To me, that means the road's not coming. I mean, do we need that contingency? I don't know. I wouldn't think that we do. It still would serve its purpose to go from Old Statesville to Statesville without the contingency of the road. That's my opinion. Other people obviously have other opinions. I would just say maybe look further into the east-west connector, whether that be wordsmith or proposed road or segments. It seems like it needs more.
For what it's worth, I feel the contingencies as they're laid out is doing just that.
Every new road is contingent on, I don't know that they're saying they have segment A, it's contingent on this, and segment B. Anytime there's a road, I assume it's contingent on something, whether that be drain water or right-of-way or personal property.
Yeah.
They're always contingent on something.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think they're called out in this particular example for this particular item because there are a couple monumental hurdles that, to me, rank far higher or are a much bigger challenge than acquiring a 5-foot sliver of someone's property for some curb and gutter. And I would just say it didn't go away in that fashion. So I don't know. Honestly, I feel like it's accomplishing what you want, but you don't, and that's fine.
The reality is, Jeff, that it was an original way, and people took deliberate action to try to get it off the plan, and this was the outcome. So that is the action that I opposed, and that's why I want it restored to this is a recommended road. And you can either be for or against that change, and that's fine. But the reality of how we got to here and why that went from a gray road to a dotted, hashed road with contingencies was deliberate decisions, and my opinion is to reverse those decisions. And you can either agree or disagree with that, and that's fine.
Well, and I want the road, just to be clear. If it's dotted, somehow make someone feel better,
Well,
all right. And if it's, I don't know. I mean, that's,
It's putting up it's literally roadblocks.
yeah, if it's contingent on the rail, you can have the road without it being contingent on the railroad, right? But currently, it has a contingency of of it crossing the railroad. But you could still have that same road without it crossing the tracks. You could have it stop at Statesville and not go to the tracks. But right now, there's a contingency of it being approved by the railroad.
okay. What I would, because from my perspective, I agree. I don't understand the contingency of it crossing or that little segment. The biggest hurdle is more between 21 and 115, but because in this scenario, we have the ability to reach out to various members, folks that were there, go back and look, I would say that we try and unearth the rationale for the 3 segments and why there is the one contingency that, as of right now, the way at least you and I are reading it, eliminates the possibility of just 21 to 115 without the other. So let's for those that have the time, even if it's just digging in and reading a little bit, watching one of the meetings, I know there'll be a handful of calls that I'll make over this time to do this. Let's uncover this a little bit so we come in specifically prepared regarding that last bit. And where we land at that point is where we land. I very much prefer to not spend an hour at the next meeting literally talking about whether the line is dotted or solid. I would love to move forward with that topic. So if we could do that, Jack, I noticed it isn't now.
My only comment would be, if you go and look at how that came about. I mean, basically, there was a traffic analysis done that said if you were able to connect to Second Street and if you were able to get under, over, across the railroad track, that helps the entire system. That does a lot to relieve traffic on Gilead Road. So all I'm saying is if you're contemplating that I'm not supporting the contingencies, I would just say to you, go to our website. There is the traffic analysis. You can look at the traffic analysis and see what it does. Is there a benefit if you don't go over or under the railroad track? yes, it is less than if it connects with Second Street. So all I'm saying is the committee made the recommendations with that type of information in mind. We paid for it. It's there on our website. If that's what you're thinking about, then I would encourage you to go look.
Jack, so the benefit, of course, would be less, and I would absolutely agree. Were they able to quantify that?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
It's even quantified. So while if they didn't go over the railroad track, it would, I'm saying it from my standpoint, it would be a level of service E at the intersection of 115 and Gilead, which is below the state standard, but it meets our standard, the town's traffic impact analysis. Go look at the traffic impact analysis. If it did connect up with Second Street, then that intersection moves up to a level of service D, which is DOT speak for, D is what they're expecting traffic to be processed at 20 years after you build the road. It's got to be processing traffic at a level of service D.
Awesome. All right, thank you. So Jack just gave us our homework assignment, okay, for that item. What else we got? Anything else? Any other straw polls?
I made my closing statement about 30 minutes ago.
I know, but, it's the way Greg's mind works, and I'm used to it by now. It always spawns the ideas. You speaking inspired him to take it to a whole nother level. All right, then in that case, any other closing comments from anyone? Otherwise, I'm very willing to accept a motion to adjourn, so your call.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? None opposed. Awesome. Thank you, everybody.